The gate is the first thing that gets you, not the cells, the gate. Because a prison gate is built to be seen from both sides, and it says two completely different things depending on where you're standing. From out here, it says, you are safe from what's inside. From in there, it says, this is where your life stops. And when a prison is abandoned, that gate stands open, rusted, swinging in the wind, and it doesn't mean anything anymore to anybody. That's the strangest feeling in these places. All that iron, all that concrete, all that certainty about who belonged where. And now the birds fly through it in both directions, and nobody's keeping anybody anywhere. Today we're walking through America's abandoned prisons, what they were, how they were built, what happened inside them, why they closed, and what they're telling us now, standing empty with the roofs falling in. This is a heavy one, and I'm going to tell it straight. Come with me. Start with the buildings, because prisons were built to be terrifying on purpose. Look at the great old prisons of this country and you'll notice something. They're designed like fortresses and cathedrals at the same time. Massive stone walls, castle towers, Gothic arches over the entrance. That was not an accident, and it wasn't for the inmates. Most of them saw that facade exactly once, on the way in. That architecture was for the public. It was a message carved in granite to everyone driving past. The law is enormous, and it is permanent, and you do not want to find out what's behind this wall. Inside, the architecture had a different job. Long cell blocks radiating out from a central hub like spokes on a wheel, so one guard standing in the middle could see down every corridor at once. Tiers of cells stacked 4 and 5 high, catwalks, bars everywhere, and that particular sound, steel on steel, echoing off stone, that everyone who ever worked in one says they still hear in their sleep. And the cells themselves. Some of the old ones were 7 feet by 9, some smaller. A bunk, a bucket or a basin, and a door that opened when someone else decided it opened. Stand in one of those cells today, in the quiet, with the sun coming through a slot window, and I promise you, you'll feel something go cold in your chest. It's the size that does it. You can touch both walls. Now here's the part most people don't know. Many of these places started as reform. The great stone prisons of the 1800s were built by people who thought they were making things better, and by the standards of what came before, they were. Before prisons, punishment was mostly public and physical. Whipping posts, stocks, branding, hanging for a long list of crimes. A prison, to the reformers of that era, was a humane alternative. The idea was that a criminal wasn't beyond saving. He was a soul who had gone wrong, and given enough silence and solitude and a Bible, he would reflect, repent, and reform. That's literally where the word penitentiary comes from, a place to do penance. So they built the system on solitude. In some of the earliest and most famous of them, a man lived alone in his cell, ate alone, exercised alone in a private walled yard, and, if he was moved through the building, he wore a hood so that he would see no one, and no one would see him. Total silence. For years. And here's the tragedy of it, and history's hardest lesson. It was designed with good intentions, and it broke people. Not metaphorically. Prolonged, total isolation drove men to psychosis, to self-harm, to permanent damage that never healed. Visitors from around the world came to study this modern, humane American system, and some of the sharpest of them, including a famous English novelist who toured one, came away horrified, writing that the slow, daily tampering with the mind was a torture worse than any physical punishment, precisely because it left no marks. That's the thing to carry out of this video if you carry one thing. Cruelty doesn't always arrive looking like cruelty. Sometimes it shows up in a clean new building, with a reformer's blueprint and a sincere belief that it's mercy. And it takes decades, and a lot of ruined people, before anyone admits what it actually was. Now let's talk about what these places became, because the reform ideal collapsed fast. Prisons filled, then they overfilled. The single cells built for solitude got 2 men, then 3, then 4. Money for programs disappeared long before money for walls. And what was supposed to be a place of reflection became, in most of these institutions, a place of pure warehousing, hard labor, harsh discipline, and a daily reality that varied enormously depending on who was running the place and who you were. And the labor. Many old prisons ran on it. Prison farms, quarries, factories, road gangs, inmates working long days producing goods and revenue, sometimes under conditions that historians describe in terms nobody wants attached to their state's history. In parts of this country, particularly in the South after the Civil War, convict leasing sent prisoners to work for private companies in mines and camps, and the death rates in some of those camps were appalling. That system disproportionately swallowed black men, often convicted under laws written to catch them, and it's one of the ugliest chapters in American criminal justice, and it happened behind walls like the ones we're walking through today. And yes, many of these old prisons had a death house. I'm not going to describe it in any detail, and I won't dress it up as a ghost story, because real people died in those rooms, and other real people had to be there when it happened. It's part of what these buildings were. It gets mentioned honestly and left alone. I also want to say something that gets lost. The guards. Prison work broke people on both sides of the bars. Officers worked low-paid, dangerous shifts inside the same stone and noise, went home carrying it, and their families lived with what it did to them. In prison towns, half the county worked inside. It was the mill, the plant, the only steady employer for miles. These places shaped everyone who came near them. Let me walk you through the rest of the building, because a prison was a small city, and most of it wasn't cells. The yard. Every one of these places has one, and standing in an abandoned yard is its own experience, a wide, flat space enclosed by wall on every side, with the sky as the only thing not made of concrete. For the men inside, that rectangle of sky was the entire outdoors for years at a stretch. Grass grows up through the cracks now. The basketball hoops rust. The wall still runs all the way around, and it still works. Even empty, even with the gate open, you feel the shape of it holding you in. The mess hall, with its long rows of bolted-down tables and benches, bolted because everything in a prison is bolted, where 1,000 men ate in shifts, in rules, in silence in the strictest eras. The kitchen, industrial and enormous. The laundry. The chapel, which most of these prisons had, and which is often the only room in the whole complex built with any beauty at all. The library. The infirmary. The barbershop with its one chair. A whole society, sealed inside a wall, running on a schedule that never changed for a century. And the workshops, where inmates made things. License plates, furniture, mail bags, brooms, shoes. Some of that work was genuinely rehabilitative. A man learned a trade and walked out with it. Some of it was closer to exploitation, for pennies. Both are in the record, side by side, sometimes in the same building, in the same year. And then, the solitary cells, the hole, in every prison's vocabulary. Down a stairway usually, in a basement corridor. A row of doors with no windows, or windows the size of a hand. Whatever the era's official policy said, this was the sharpest instrument the building had, and every prison had one. And its use is one of the things historians and courts have argued about ever since. Walking that corridor with a flashlight in an abandoned prison is the single quietest place I can think of in America. I also want to spend a moment on the escapes, because they're the stories everybody knows, and they deserve a fair telling. Every old prison has its legends. The tunnel dug with spoons over years, the raft made of raincoats, the man who studied one gap in one routine for a decade. And here's the thing, those stories get told like adventure movies, and they are gripping. But underneath every one of them is a person who wanted out of a place so badly that they'd risk dying in a drain pipe to get there. That's not a caper. That's a measure of what the inside was like. The escape stories are, in a strange way, the most honest reviews these buildings ever received. So why did they close? Some simply wore out. A stone prison built in the 1800s cannot be brought up to modern standards without essentially rebuilding it, and the plumbing, wiring, and heating of a fortress are nightmares. Some were closed by lawsuits and investigations after conditions became indefensible. Some closed because the population moved, or because states consolidated into newer, cheaper, blander facilities out in the countryside, because the modern prison, notably, is designed to be invisible. No more castle on the hill announcing itself. Now it's a low beige building behind a berm off a county road, and you drive past without knowing. That change tells you something too. We stopped wanting to see it. And so the old ones sit empty. And nature does what nature does. Water first, then rot, then the roofs come down, and trees start growing in the exercise yards. Paint peels off in sheets in the cell blocks. Cell doors hang open. Someone's name and a date, scratched into the wall in 1930-something, is still there. The smallest, loudest thing in the entire building. I was here. I existed. Now, the ghost hunting. Because you can't discuss abandoned prisons without it. Every one of them is called haunted. Every single one. Ghost tours run in a lot of them, and for some of these towns, that's the whole tourism economy now. And I understand why the stories exist, but I'll give you my honest take, same as I do every time on this channel. I don't think you need ghosts to explain why a place like that feels the way it feels. Think about what these buildings actually held. Decades of confinement, violence, real and constant. Men who died there, some of them forgotten by everyone outside. Guards' fear, inmates' rage, and mostly, a crushing ocean of boredom and despair, poured into that concrete every day for 100 years. You don't need the supernatural for a place like that to be heavy. The weight is historical, and it's human. Call it a ghost if you like. I call it memory, and memory is heavier. What bothers me about some of the ghost hunting is that it turns real suffering into a carnival ride. There's a difference between a museum tour that tells you the honest history of a place, and there are excellent ones, run by people who care deeply, and a midnight thrill show that uses somebody's actual life as a haunted house prop. Walk through with respect, or don't walk through at all. So what happens to these buildings now? Some got demolished, the land sold, the history poured over. Some are simply rotting behind fences, too expensive to fix, too toxic to sell, too complicated to demolish. And some, the fortunate ones, became museums. And this is where I land on the hopeful side. Because a preserved prison is one of the most powerful teaching tools a society can have. You can read about solitary confinement in a book and feel nothing. Stand in that 7x9 cell for 60 seconds, with the door closed and the silence real, and you understand it in your body in a way no argument could ever achieve. Several of these places do exactly that now. They let you stand there, and then they tell you honestly what happened and what came of it. That's not a haunted house. That's a mirror. And here's what I want to leave you with. We talked in another video about how a society is measured by how it treats the people it doesn't know what to do with. Prisons are the sharpest version of that test because these are the people society has decided to be done with entirely. These ruins are the physical record of every answer we gave. The reformers who believed in redemption and accidentally invented a machine that broke minds. The eras that gave up on redemption entirely and just stacked people. The labor systems that turned punishment into profit. All of it, in stone, still standing with the roof falling in. We're still writing the next chapter of that record right now, in those low beige buildings you can't see from the road. Someday those will be ruins too, and someone will walk through them and ask what we were thinking. It's worth being able to answer. Now tell me, is there an old prison near where you live, abandoned, torn down, or turned into a museum? Did someone in your family work in one? Have you ever taken one of those tours? And what did it feel like to stand in a cell? And what do you think these places tell us about ourselves? Put it in the comments with the name and the state. I read every single one, and on this topic especially, I want to hear you. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And be careful how you measure a society. The buildings keep the receipts.